Two strangers once scaled a rock. A 22-year-old country music star's career was abruptly halted in 1958 when he came in London with an unexpected partner. She was his cousin and was 13 years old. However, the most perverse scandals in country music did not start with child marriages. During live television, one celebrity lit an award on fire. Another lost millions after likening a president to Hitler. These legends destroyed lives while hiding behind their instruments and engaging in bigamy and prejudice. For many years, the industry concealed it. However, the truth always manages to get out. Kool Spade. Spade was regarded as the king of Western swing during the height of his popularity. He even competed with Bob Wills to win over post-war country fans, packing ballrooms with thousands of seats. He dominated the nightlife in Los Angeles. His television program once attracted an incredible 75% of local viewers, and he starred in over 50 Western films. His set was visited by celebrities like Gene Autry and Frank Sinatra. Additionally, Kool had his own Hollywood star and was a billionaire by 1950. He was even designing Water Wonderland, an amusement park. However, on April 3, 1961, everything changed. Kool's jealousy and paranoia flared that night. He frequently accused his 36-year-old second wife, LMA, of being unfaithful. He was driven to violence by his obsession with the charges. He made Melody, his 14-year-old daughter, watch him viciously abuse LMA that night. In a fit of wrath, he tormented her, stripped her, and beat her. It was surprising how violent it was. In addition to breaking her ribs and smashing her skull, he also stomped on her, leaving her with over 70 injuries. To ensure she wouldn't wake up again, he burned her with his cigarette even after she had passed away. The house became a horrifying sight of a crime. Even seasoned officers shrank when they saw Lane's naked and severely battered corpse. According to the autopsy, it was torture-induced murder. In the trial, Kool's initial account of having slipped in the shower was refuted. The country was taken aback by Melody's revelation. She explained that her father had summoned her into the room to see what he had done to her mother. Kool was found guilty of first-degree murder by torture in August 1961 and given a life sentence. He maintained an odd facade of respectability within. He was hailed as a model prisoner and started a prison band. He received a parole offer after just 8 years. He was given a standing ovation when he performed a concert for police enforcement on November 23, 1969 while on temporary release. He passed away backstage a few minutes later after collapsing due to a heart attack. Like his crime, his demise was shocking. His legacy was one of terror rather than song and fame, as he became known as the man whose narrative went from acclaim to obituary in the same evening. Paycheck Johnny. In country music, Johnny Paycheck's shooting inside the North High Lounge is remembered for all the wrong reasons. December 19, 1985 was the date. He wasn't departing a concert audience or exiting a stage. In Maryland, where the FBI was keeping a watchful eye out for a raid, he had just snuck out of a crazy party with the Hells Angels. He hurried back into the clubhouse to retrieve his 2 suitcases full of cash and his cache of Peruvian cocaine before he left. He drove restlessly and wildly until he eventually pulled over at a pub in Hillsboro, Ohio, which is only 20 miles from his house. He found himself in the dimly lit club with residents Larry Wise and Lloyd. Paranoia combined with Paycheck's renegade streak and the narcotics he was taking didn't help. Lloyd Wise once offered turtle soup in what appeared to be a harmless way. Paycheck broke. He drew a T-22 handgun and fired in a sudden fit of rage. Wise's life was spared, but his cap was torn off as the bullet skimmed his scalp. Wise took it personally, I suppose, and later in court he would declare, "He blowed my hat off." Everywhere, the shooting made news. Stars throughout the country flocked to join him. Merle Haggard and George Jones contributed $50,000 to cover his bail. In order to pay for his legal fees, Jerry Lee Lewis even performed at benefit shows. Paycheck's assertion that he had acted in self-defense was not supported by the evidence. He was accused of tampering with evidence and aggravated assault after throwing away the gun. Due to his use of a firearm, Judge Darrell Hoddle sentenced him to 9.5 years in jail on May 16, 1986, almost all of which were required by Ohio law. The news caused shockwaves around country music, but the audience remained motionless as the sentence was handed down. He got thousands of letters from fans all over the world in the next 2 years. His spirit was not taken away by prison. He attempted to stay busy, worked as a teacher's assistant, and graduated from high school. But the problems didn't stop there. He was forced to file for bankruptcy in 1990 after the IRS slammed him with a $1.6 million tax levy. His image as an outlaw only got more solid. "Take this job and shove it." His 1977 hymn was still recognizable and now seemed to be the narrative of his own life. Governor Richard Celeste commuted his sentence after 22 months. However, the wounds persisted. Paycheck never left the shadow of what transpired in that pub, and the victim never forgot the night. Allen David Company. It's difficult to top David Allen Coe's life if you want to witness true anarchy in country music. He didn't only occasionally cause difficulties with his career, it seemed like a series of scandals. The majority of Nashville's vocalists occasionally broke the rules. Coe seems intent on tearing them to shreds. He was only 9 years old when the trouble began. He spent time in and out of prisons and rehabilitation programs, developing a violent reputation and participating in violent talent competitions while incarcerated. Rumors that he had slain another prisoner and even spent time on death row started to circulate as he grew older. According to official records, that never took place. Coe, however, made no effort to stop the narrative. In fact, he allowed the legend to overshadow the truth by adding to it through his own songs and website. He didn't immediately enter Nashville's good graces after being permanently freed from prison in 1967. Rather, he parked a hearse outside the Ryman Auditorium, where he occasionally slept in the back and performed music on the street. He soon signed a record deal and even penned hits for other musicians, such as the timeless songs "Shove It" and "Take This Job." Nevertheless, he appeared to be working against himself all the time. Coe released 2 albums on his own, Nothing Sacred and Underground, in 1978 and 1982. There were so many offensive songs in both that no record label wanted to work with them. NF, in particular, was rife with homophobic and racist epithets. His songs are among the most obscene, racist, misogynistic, and homophobic songs ever recorded by a well-known songwriter. According to the New York Times and almost all other major media, Coe leaned into the wrath instead of retreating. Years later, he charged $20 per for the recordings, which he sold himself, usually at concerts and in biker magazines. He frequently cited the fact that his drummer, Kerry Brown, was black in order to explain the lyrics. But the harm was already done. He referred to them as satire. The album became notorious and contributed to Coe's peculiar character while circulating underground for decades. It was not the end of his problems. He acknowledged not filing income taxes for at least 6 years in 2015. He was placed on probation for 3 years and paid $980,000 in IRS fines and reparations for that error. Coe began requesting only cash for his live performances in order to prevent his money from being taken. While the IRS persisted in pursuing him, he gave at least 100 concerts annually. All things considered, it's obvious that no one in country music created a legend like David Allen Company. He appeared to relish living the story more, the more surprising it was. Lewis, Jerry Lee. Jerry Lee Lewis wasn't simply displaying incredible energy at the piano when he first appeared on the music scene. He was on the verge of establishing the norm for scandal in country and rock music. There was nothing that could have prepared the world for the shock of May 1958. When Lewis arrived in London for a 37-show tour, he was just 22 years old. A reporter saw a very young child with him at the Heathrow airport. She was identified as Lewis's bride and went by Myra Gale Brown. Everyone was taken aback by the truth. In addition to being his second cousin, Myra was just 13 years old and had recently graduated from 7th grade. Even worse, Lewis had not yet filed for divorce from his second marriage. The press in Britain went into overdrive. He was yelled at and jeered at by the crowds until he was ejected off the stage. After just 3 performances, his tour fell apart, costing him an estimated $200,000 in losses, a huge amount at the time. In a matter of days, venues refused to hire him, and radio stations ceased playing his songs. He was portrayed in the newspapers as a criminal and a homewrecker. Lewis attempted to explain himself by claiming that in Louisiana, where he was raised, these kinds of weddings were typical. However, his career was not saved by that explanation. The backlash intensified in the United States. Fans turned against the man who was once regarded as the killer after learning about the marriage and the bigamy. His sales plummeted from millions to nearly nothing. As more information became available, the scandal only grew more intense. Myra was Lewis's first cousin once removed in addition to being a young bride. The media learned that he was still legally married to his former wife, Jane Mitchum, when the couple returned to the United States. Nevertheless, for 13 tumultuous years, Lewis and Myra remained together. Myra subsequently claimed that she endured every type of physical and psychological mistreatment conceivable during that period. She spoke of horrific violent outbursts that were frequently caused by Lewis's rage and excessive drinking. Lewis never slowed down in spite of the commotion. He got married 7 times over the years. The circumstances surrounding the deaths of 2 of his wives left more questions than answers. Eventually, Myra wrote a book about her experience, describing him as a dangerous child disguised as a man. His name is still associated with upheaval and scandal decades later. Not the sort of fame that most musicians would ever dream of. Williams. Hank Jr. Prior to Hank Williams Jr. blowing up his own career on live television, no one anticipated that primetime football would devolve into anarchy. When the country music icon Bocephus appeared on Fox and Friends on October 3, 2011, he made a statement that left the hosts speechless. When questioned about President Obama and House Speaker John Boehner playing golf together, Hank likened it to Hitler and Netanyahu playing golf together. As he continued, labeling Obama and Biden the enemy, the anchors froze. In just one day, ESPN, with whom he had collaborated since 1989, released his well-known Monday Night Football theme tune. The abruptness of a scratched record in a cacophonous bar marked its end. Hank wasn't the kind to say sorry. He doubled down while networks and companies frantically tried to find sponsors. He attacked ESPN on his own website, saying he left of his own volition. According to his writing, the network had violated the First Amendment. The argument rapidly went viral on the internet, with irate supporters standing up for him and detractors accusing him of being careless. In just 2 days, his song Keep the Change, which was directed against Obama and the networks, was downloaded over 180,000 times. He claimed to have no remorse and even labeled Mickey Mouse cruel on The View. In front of a sizable crowd at the Iowa State Fair the following year, he went even farther and claimed that the populace despised the Muslim president of the United States because he detested farming, the military, and the nation. Scandal wasn't a consequence of Hank's career. It was propelled forward by the fuel. Confederate flags with his Bocephus moniker sewn over them triumphantly waved during concerts that turned into gatherings. If the South W and other songs with Southern pride and threats were frequently on his set lists. One hot summer performance in 2015 included followers wearing rebel flag capes while he threw homophobic epithets from the stage. Every word was greeted with applause, which enhanced the mood. Charged. Hank remained focused on his core audience despite every storm. He took advantage of every cultural conflict, always grinning to show that he had no intention of stopping. He was considered the outlaw king of country music by his most ardent supporters. To his detractors, he was the ringmaster of Charlie Rich, the noisiest circus in the business. The audience was prepared for the night's most significant moment in 1975, when the Country Music Association Awards were at their height. The announcement of the Entertainer of the Year award was imminent. After winning the title the previous year, Charlie Rich, also referred to as the Silver Fox, took the stage once more, but something didn't feel quite right. He was unsteady on his feet, and more than anxiety were in his voice. He was still taking painkillers for a broken foot and had spent the entire evening sipping gin and tonics. No one realized how bizarre the situation was going to get, but the audience sensed something out of the ordinary. Rather than keeping things straightforward, Rich took a detour. Some of the nominees' wives shifted uneasily in their chairs as a result of his awkward jokes and even his flirtation with Loretta Lynn. He talked endlessly about the challenging year he had just finished and brought up a trip to London. As they waited for him to eventually open the envelope, the suspense increased. He gently lit the winner's card on fire after taking out a lighter. The audience gasped in shock when he held it out and said, "My friend, Mr. John Denver." As the ashes fell, the room was filled with gasps. Denver was not even present when it took place. Unaware that his big moment had been accompanied by a blast of flames, he accepted his prize via satellite from Los Angeles. Rich appeared to be making fun of Denver, a vocalist who some believed was too pop-friendly and polished for traditional country music. The reaction was instantaneous. Rich never received another invitation to the CMA Awards. Sales of his songs plummeted as soon as they were taken off the air. Rich's son then clarified that his father had no intention of offending Denver. It was only a joke that went horribly wrong, he said. However, the harm had already been done. Once pushing the envelope by fusing pop, jazz, blues, and country music, Charlie Rich had set a fire that ultimately destroyed his own career. He made a lasting impression on country music in a single, startling moment. Wagner, Porter. Under the bright TV lights, Porter Wagner was well known for his glistening rhinestone costumes. He was even more well known behind the scenes for the control he attempted to maintain. The teenage vocalist who joined his act in 1967, Dolly Parton, was the source of his greatest conflict. They were once one of Nashville's most well-liked groups thanks to their duets. The developing tension between them was not visible to the public. Their relationship had deteriorated to the point where Dolly wrote, "I Will Always Love You" as a farewell note in 1974. The resulting split was anything but peaceful, despite the song's tenderness. Wagner filed a $3 million lawsuit against her in 1979, alleging that she had breached their agreement and owed him 15% of her future earnings and royalties, potentially for the remainder of her career. He claimed in court that he was entitled to the money since he had made her famous. Throughout the months-long legal battle, tabloids ran stories about betrayal and backstabbing. Dolly ultimately consented to give him about $1 million spread over a number of years. She later acknowledged that he received the first million she ever made, which she referred to as the price of peace. The financial difficulties weren't the only ones. Wagner frequently behaved like a man who desired complete control, according to Dolly and those close to her. She characterized him as a male chauvinist who rarely acknowledged her independence and attempted to direct every aspect of her job. He continued to give sour interviews after she left, accusing her of being unreliable and claiming that she would even betray her own family if it benefited her career. He gave the impression that he could not bear to let her go on without him. The harm extended beyond their private dispute. Wagner's personal financial situation and career started to deteriorate. He invested heavily in restaurants, made bad business choices, and lavished money on his ostentatious lifestyle. He was forced to sell several of his cherished rhinestone suits, which had once served as a symbol of his wealth, at auction after going bankrupt in the middle of the 1980s. For a man who used to dominate the Grand Ole Opry stage, it was a terrible fall. Porter Wagner's reputation is ultimately recalled for both his music and the acrimonious altercation with Dolly Parton, which exposed the darker aspects of his career. Jones, George. George Jones was one of the few celebrities whose personal lives occasionally, and not always in the greatest way, overshadowed their music. His reputation for disruption was nearly as well known as his voice by the late 1970s. He was known as No-Show Jones because he skipped 54 shows in 1979 alone. Even though there was no assurance he would show there, fans continued to pay the $13 to $50 ticket fee, which is equivalent to roughly $50 today. While promoters began putting money aside for refunds and even made jokes about betting on whether Jones would even take the stage, some people arrived ready to forfeit their money. His career was about to end, and the only thing that saved him from going completely missing was the enormous popularity of his 1980 hit song, "He Stopped Loving Her Today." Jones's shenanigans, however, extended well beyond his show skipping. Shirley, his wife, tried to prevent him from drinking in the late 1960s by concealing all of the car keys inside the home before she left. She believed she had him cornered, but the family's John Deere riding mower was outside, with the key still in the ignition under a security light. With unwavering resolve, Jones mounted the mower and proceeded to drive it all the way to the liquor store located in Beaumont, Texas. The trip was 8 m according to some. Others maintained that it was 16. In any case, it took him almost 3 hours to finish the trip, creeping along at only 5 miles per hour. He acknowledged years later that nothing could keep him from drinking. Things had gotten considerably worse by 1982. Jones has just received his second consecutive Male Vocalist of the Year award from the Country Music Association. Shortly thereafter, however, he was stopped by authorities on I-65 south of Nashville. He was driving a Cadillac while intoxicated and swerving along the highway. There was a half-empty Jack Daniels bottle on the passenger seat. In addition, the car's license plate was a piece of cardboard with Possum 3 scribbled on it, a reference to his moniker rather than an actual license plate. Jones reacted violently, attempting to kick the TV cameraman who had come to document the arrest before he was taken away. When he failed his sobriety test, he said to the officer, "I'm drunk. Take me to jail." He continued to swing between laughing and yelling in the holding cell. The storm that followed him around was perfectly captured in this image. His notoriety seemed to only get stronger despite his time in alcohol and drug treatment centers, including a hospital stay in Mississippi following a major accident. Buck Owens was the quintessential country star. He enchanted millions of people on Ha-Ha by appearing on stage in his glittering clothes and grinning broadly. However, the man behind the guitar was not at all like the amiable person he presented to the public once the cameras stopped rolling. Those who worked with him later spoke of a fear-filled environment. Former band members said in Eileen Sisk's 2010 biography that Owens would degrade and humiliate anyone who disagreed with him. Some said that they were afraid to talk to him at all. He had complete control over his environment and frequently reprimanded or fired anyone who didn't live up to his expectations. Even at the height of his popularity, when his concerts brought him millions of dollars, money was always the first consideration. At times, Owens gave his band members as little as $100 a week. It wasn't easy to leave either. Quitting musicians were frequently placed on blacklists in Bakersfield and beyond. Walking on eggshells because you never know when Owens would snap was how some who stayed put it. His well-known co-host on Hey Ha, Roy Clark, has said that working with him was like always worrying about his next tantrum. His brutality was not limited to the office. Owens was also abusive in his personal life, according to testimony that CISK was able to get. While he continued to portray himself to the world as a loving family guy, wives and girlfriends spoke of violent outbursts of jealous wrath. When he believed that rivals couldn't be silenced by words alone, he even went so far as to involve the FBI. Still, his success was undeniable. Owens amassed an estimated $100 million empire by the time of his death in 2006. In addition to owning radio and television stations, investing in cattle ranches, and controlling lucrative publication rights, he had 21 #1 hits. He took pride in being a shrewd businessman and was well known for billing his own band for food and stage props. But he was not at peace with all that wealth. He became increasingly reclusive in his senior years. As he grew older, Buddy Allen Owens, his son, later acknowledged that he felt lonely because of his father's intense independence. Owens himself made no effort to conceal the truth. He said in interview after interview that I was a bastard on wheels. Even more frankly, his biographer stated that Owens could purchase nearly anything in life, with the exception of a contented mind. Young Farron. The songs that made Farron Young famous weren't the only part of his story. Additionally, it was about a wild streak that stunned Nashville's most resilient citizens. In 1972, Young took an 18-year-old fan onto the stage and slapped her in front of a stunned audience at a show in Clarksburg, West Virginia. He was retaliating because she had spat at him. Because the crime was so egregious, he was arrested and given a $24 fine in addition to further court fees. The notorious reputation was further enhanced by the swiftly spreading news. The hillbilly heartthrob, Young, was not only recognized for his songs. His unexpected, inebriated outbursts were a source of worry. He occasionally lost his anger with waitresses, reporters, and even his own bandmates. His darkest periods were frequently driven by barbiturates and bourbon. He once urinated all over a hotel hallway carpet, laughing as he said he had christened the motel in celebration of the band's tour stop, according to his biographer, Diane Deichmann. At times, his rage became even more intense. He shot a pistol into his Tennessee home's ceiling in 1984 when intoxicated and enraged. His 32-year marriage broke down at that very time. His story's most eerie moment occurred in December 1996. Young felt abandoned by the Nashville industry he had once helped shape, and he was alone, dejected, and crippled by emphysema and cancer. He grabbed a .38 pistol and shot himself one morning. He was not immediately killed. He was discovered alive in bed by a longtime bandmate, but he died the next day at Summit Medical Center at the age of 64. He wrote a succinct and heartbreaking suicide note. He placed the blame on his deteriorating health and what he described as his career's demise. He expressed his belief that he had been left behind by the industry. One last connection to the rebellious spirit of old country music was left when his ashes were thrown over Old Hickory Lake at Johnny and June Carter Cash's house after his passing.